Hey everyone, welcome to today's lesson. My name is Wes. This is Interactive English, which our channel, it's all about helping you practice and improve your English skills. And today I want to talk to you about a skill that is very important, and that is listening. But not only that, I want to talk to you about different listening skills, especially very important listening skills, because listening, I think, is it's something that, it's part of the way we communicate. We all want to have conversations, and in order to do that, we need to understand what the other person is saying. It's very important, and I want to practice some of these different listening skills with you today in order to help you improve your skills. Because to be quite honest, listening, this is my most challenging skill. When I'm trying to learn other languages, I've studied Spanish, I've studied Korean. Right now, I'm trying to learn Romanian. Listening is always the most difficult for me. I know everybody's a different learner, but this is what's most challenging for me. So this is something that I really need to practice when I'm learning another language. So before we jump into it, I just want to say hello to everybody who's joined me in the chat. If you are watching this now, write your name in the chat. If you're even watching this later, write to me in the comments. Tell me your name, tell me where you're from, because I just love hearing from people, especially new students. So hello, Julie, Ruma, Ricardo, Aiden, Lolly, Michelangelo, Vethi, Ramona. Hello, welcome, Robert. Thank you guys for joining me today. I'll try and get in some more shout outs as the lesson goes on. So we're going to talk about listening today. I'm going to tell you about these different skills and why they're important and how we use them. And then again, we're going to do a little bit of practice. I want you to listen to me, talk to you about a few things like we're having a conversation, and we're going to see how well you can listen to what I'm saying. So it's all about comprehension. It's all about trying to understand the words that you hear, the phrases that you hear, the sentences that you hear. And these are the skills that we're going to talk about today. Main idea, key details, making inferences, and interpreting meaning. Those are the 4 different skills that I want to look at, and we're going to go through them one at a time. So first, let's begin with main idea. So when you think of the main idea, what all it means is it is just trying to understand what is the point of the conversation. Why are you having this conversation? Like, what is it that you guys are talking about? And I would tell you that you really need to comprehend the big picture. Now, what do I mean when I say big picture? Because this is a great idiom in English. It's a good expression if you want to use it and people talk about the big picture. What that means is that you need to comprehend the complete story, the complete idea. That is the big picture. So when you are listening to a podcast, or maybe you're listening to a song, or you're just having a conversation, you need to comprehend the big picture, the entire story, the entire idea, and that's going to help you identify the main idea. Now, if you're talking about something that is like a very short presentation or a very short story, oftentimes you might hear the main idea at the very beginning. People will start talking, and they're talking about a certain topic, and they might just say the main idea, the very first thing, the very first few sentences, you might hear the main idea. If you're talking about a longer story, for example, maybe a movie, and then it comes down to, you really need to understand the different parts. You need to understand the beginning, the middle, and the end, the big picture. And then that way you will know, what is the most important topic? The main idea, the most important topic. So the other thing that I would tell you, I'm going to throw another expression, or maybe it's even perhaps a proverb at you to help you kind of think about the main idea. What I would tell you, my suggestion would be this: don't miss the forest for the trees. So this is a proverb that you can tell somebody else, like you're giving them some advice. Don't miss the forest for the trees. And what it means is that when you are doing something, in this case, you are listening to, like I said, it could be a song, a TV show, having a conversation. The forest, that is the big picture right there. All right. You need to understand the big picture. The trees are those just tiny details. So it's saying that don't get too hooked on those tiny details that you forget about the big picture. Don't miss the forest for the trees. Now you can use this proverb. It doesn't just have to relate to listening. You can use this to talk about so many other things. Perhaps you're doing a project at work and you need to do the entire project, but you get stuck on these little details. And because of that, it becomes a bigger problem. And somebody could tell you, hey, don't miss the forest for the trees. So don't get too hooked on when you're listening that you're trying to just think about all of the specific details. Start with the big picture. Start with the main idea. That to me is the most important skill when it comes to listening, is that you just want to understand, well, the main idea, the main topic that is being discussed. So let's go back. Let's practice this, and we're gonna start. We're gonna start out a little easier, and then it will get a little more challenging. So I am going to read something to you, and let's just pretend like we're having a conversation right now. And I'm going to say something to you, and all I want you to do is tell me, what do you think is the main idea? What's the main idea? All right. So here we go. We're gonna practice your listening. All I want you to do is just listen and tell me what the main idea is. So I would tell you this. We're having a conversation, and I might say, I love eating pizza. It's my favorite food because the combination between cheese and tomato sauce is spectacular. There's a great pizza restaurant close to my home, but recently I've been learning how to make pizza on my own because hands down, pizza is the best. Okay, so I just gave you that short little excerpt right there. That's just a short little listening. And I want you to tell me, what is the main idea? Write it in the chat, write it in the comments. This is when I want you guys to participate, all right? What do you think is the main idea? I will read it again, okay? So here we go. I'll read it one more time. Think about the main idea. Ready? I love eating pizza. It's my favorite food because the combination of cheese and tomato sauce is spectacular. There's a great pizza restaurant close to my home, but recently I've been learning how to make pizza on my own. Hands down, pizza is the best. All right. So again, I told you we're going to start a little easier and then work into it. I also wanted to point out, if you heard that expression at the end, hands down. If somebody says that expression, hands down, then that just means like for sure or definitely or absolutely, that you want to say that, like, okay, hands down, this is the best. So that is another great expression that you can use, hands down, to say definitely, absolutely. All right. So the main idea, again, there can be more than one answer. We have Aiden, the delicious pizza. Yes. Gertrudis, you love pizza. Anna, pizza is amazing. Priscilla, love eating pizza. Excellent. All right. So this is what I wrote down. Again, there could be more than one answer, but the main idea could just be, well, maybe you said eating pizza, or pizza is the best, or Wes loves pizza. These are all acceptable answers, but you were able to listen to what I was saying and then understand, well, what is the main topic? And again, I think that I wanted to start with this main idea because I think when you're listening to something, this is the first thing that you should really keep in mind that you want to understand. Because if you understand the main idea, that is going to allow you to follow the conversation. It's going to allow you to more easily follow the movie. Whatever it is you're listening to, this is the most important thing. Because once you kind of understand the main idea, then you can move in to key details. And once you get those key details, again, that is going to improve your comprehension. That's going to help you understand exactly what the person is saying to you. and you're just going to get more information. So this is the next skill that I wanted to talk to you about, and that is key details. So when you think about key details, what this means is that you are listening for groups of words or groups or different phrases, and you're trying to identify specific information. And these details that you're listening to, they could be, well, descriptive details. You could be talking about adjectives. Those are very descriptive because they tell us about size, they tell us about color, they tell us about the shape. So that is a great example of when you're listening to something, if you hear adjectives, those are good details. Those are key details that are going to help you understand the story or what you're listening to. Details could also be things like, well, names, dates, any number for that matter. That could be a key detail when you're listening to a conversation. So the reason why I think details are also important, and to try and help you along with this, what I would suggest that you do is that you try to, put a picture in your mind. When you hear those adjectives, put a picture in your mind. When you hear a number, put that number in your mind. And almost like treat it like you're watching a TV show or a movie, because that's going to help you follow along with what the person is saying. If you can put a picture in your mind, that's going to help you capture those key details. And then when you need to, you'll be able to better recall the information. So what do I mean when you recall the information? Because if you're having a conversation with somebody, you want to be able to first understand what they're saying. And then if you need to, if you've identified some key details, you want to be able to share that information maybe with another person, or perhaps it's just part of the conversation. You want to discuss it with the person that you're talking to. So try to put a picture in your mind. It's going to help you understand what you're listening to, but it's also going to help you recall that information. That is the important thing that I wanted to hit on when talking about key details. So what we're going to do is, again, I am going to give you, I'm going to tell you a story. All right. This is a true story. It's a true story about me. And I want you to listen to the story. And the first time I will read it twice. The first time that you listen to the story, I want you to think about the main idea. I told you that's the primary thing that I want you to think about. If you hear some details, perfect. I want you to think about the main idea, and then I'm going to ask you a couple questions. These questions are going to be about details from what I tell you. And then I'll read it again and then see if you can identify those details. Are you ready? So let's go. Here we go. Again, all I want you to do, you just need to listen right now. And this is me telling you a story. This is a true story from my life. Are you ready? Here we go. So I'd say, sometimes, this was from a long time ago too. I'll just tell you that. Sometimes my job, it can be a bit monotonous. I work at a golf course and pick up golf balls on a driving range. I must pick up thousands of golf balls each day. I start work at 8:30 in the morning and I head out onto the driving range. Then I take a short 15-minute break at 11:15. Lunch is at 1 o'clock sharp. I usually pack a PB&J sandwich. That's what I like to eat. And then I go back out onto the driving range and then I finish work at 4. The time does not fly. Okay, so I said this is a true story from my past, although I'm telling you the story as though this is what's happening now. I use the present tense, but this is true. I used to work at a golf course. It was the very first job that I have. So again, when you listen to that, the first thing is just start, well, what is the main idea? Okay? And now I want you to listen for some key details. Okay? So I have a couple of questions that I want to tell you right now that I want you to think about. And perhaps you were able to easily follow the story and you remember those details now. That's great. If not, then just listen for the information. So the first question, I have 2 questions for you. The first question is right. What time do I take a break? And I'll give you some options. Do I take a break at 9:45 a.m., 10:45 a.m., or 11:45 a.m.? what time do I take a break? That is one of the details. And then the second one is, what do I eat for lunch? Okay? So those are the two questions I want you to think about as I read it again. Those are the details that I want to see if you can pick out as I read this again. Okay, so all you need to do right now is just listen. Okay, listen to my story telling you about, well, my time working at the golf course. All right, so I'd say, sometimes my job can be a bit monotonous. I work at a golf course and I pick up golf balls on the driving range. I must pick up thousands of golf balls each day. I start work at 8:30 in the morning and head out onto the driving range. Then I take a 15-minute break at 10:45. Lunch is at 1 o'clock sharp, and I usually pack a PB&J sandwich. That's what I enjoy eating. I go back out onto the driving range, and then I finish work at 4. The time does not fly. Okay, so again, this is a true story. This was the very first job that I had when I started working. I was 16 years old, and I was working at a golf course. I worked at the driving range. So I gave you two questions that I wanted you to think about. And again, because we're practicing our listening, I wanted just to tell you those. I wasn't going to show you the questions. So the first question was this. I said, what time do I take a break? And I gave you three options. A, 9:45 a.m., B, 10:45 a.m., or C, 11:45 a.m. What time do I take a break? Now, some of you, I hope you were able to extrapolate this because it was not that tricky, but maybe a little bit. I take a break at 10:45 a.m. Excellent. Yes, Aiden, Samuel, Sleepwalker, nice. Now, in the story, I did not say 10:45. I said I take a break at 10:45. 10:45, 15 minutes to 11 o'clock is 10:45. And this is where, like, if you are taking a listening test, such as the IELTS or the TOEFL, this is something they try to do kind of not in order to trick you, but to really test your comprehension. They may take one detail, but they're going to say it in a different way. So I told you 10:45, but in the question that I gave you, I wanted you to see if you could identify that as 10:45. Now, the next question that I had for you, I asked you, I said, what do I eat for lunch? All right. Somebody asked, you love pizza. Yes. I probably should have put pizza, but that is not true. I did not bring pizza with me to the driving range. All right. So, yes, I saw it answer. Karim, excellent. So what I eat for lunch is a PB&J. So I don't know, some of you may not be familiar with a PB&J. This is, I would say it's kind of an American thing. And what PB&J stands for, it stands for peanut butter and jelly sandwich, a PB&J. And this is something that I think it's quite common that kids would eat PB&J sandwiches. I was 16 at the time. They're very easy to make, and I would put together a PB&J. I would take it with me because I would get hungry out on the golf course. So some of you put a sandwich. That would be correct, but if you really wanted to identify that key detail, a PB&J sandwich, peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Excellent. All right, so remember, details, that is talking about those specific information, the names, the numbers, the adjectives that will all, if you can identify them, put a picture in your mind because, again, it's going to help your comprehension and it's going to help you recall the information. So the next skill that I want to talk to you about is this one, making inferences. Now, if you don't know what this is, what this means when you make inferences is that you are using the information that you know in order to make a guess or to infer information that is not directly stated. And this is so important when you really want to, understand the big picture, the entire situation, because often people are not always going to say all the information directly. You might just have to, they're going to give you part of it, and then you're just going to have to guess or infer other things that are happening. So, for example, if I were to tell you something like this, okay, I'm just going to tell you the information, and I want you to infer, well, what's the weather like? So I could say something to you like, well, I got in the car soaking wet. I could hear the pitter-patter sounds hitting the window, okay? And I might say, well, what is the weather like? What do you think is the weather like? I didn't directly tell you what it is, but I gave you some information so that you could make a guess. So let me say that again. I'd say, if I were to say, I got in the car soaking wet, and I could hear that pitter-patter sound hitting the window. I didn't tell you directly what it is, but you can make an inference and infer, well, what is the weather like outside? All right? And what you should say, yes, Satada, perfect, Lali, sorry if I mispronounced names. The sleepwalker, it's raining. It's raining outside. I get in the car, I'm wet. All right, well, why could I be wet? There are different reasons why I could be wet. Maybe somebody threw me in a pool, maybe it's raining. But then when I follow it up and say you could hear that pitter-patter sound hitting the window, then that should tell you right there, okay, it's raining outside. So I might not, when you're having a conversation with somebody, or maybe you're listening to a presentation in class or a presentation at work, people might not always directly say every piece of information. So this is where it's good to be able to make inferences and infer other things to better your comprehension. Okay, so let's practice this. And another, I guess you could say it's another proverb that I could tell you, and this is something that to use. And when it comes to making inferences, I could say, look, read between the lines. And when somebody tells you to read between the lines, they're basically telling you to try to understand the hidden information. That there's certain information that you could say it's hidden, or in this case, we're talking about listening that somebody does not say directly, and you need to understand that. You need to make inferences. So I could say this proverb right here. Okay, when it comes to making inferences, all right, listen to what somebody's saying and then read between the lines. All right, this is important, but this is a great proverb that, again, you could use in a variety of situations if you want somebody to understand some hidden information. You could tell them, read between the lines. All right, so let's practice right now. I'm going to read you a situation, and I want you to listen to it and try to make some inferences. Okay, so what I would tell you is this. We're going to go through this slowly. And I want you to think about the following, all right? I'm going to tell you about two people. And I want you to think about what's the relationship between these two people. What is the relationship between these two people that I'm getting ready to tell you about in this little story, okay? So again, all I want you to do right now is I just want you to listen, all right? We're going to go through this a little bit at a time. So what's the relationship? If I were to start like telling you a story and I say, they were walking along the pier side by side when he reached down and took her by the hand, okay? That's a little bit of information, and you're thinking about the relationship. What can you infer? Okay, well, these two people obviously know each other. They're holding each other by the hand. It could be they could have a romantic relationship. They could be family members. Family members could walk hand in hand. But again, they do know each other. Now let's add some more to that, all right? So I'll start over again. They were walking along the pier side by side when he reached down and took her by the hand. They stopped at the edge of the pier and embraced. They stared into each other's eyes, listening to the sound of the ocean water below their feet. Okay? So now I've given you a little bit more information to where you think, okay, it's a little bit of a romantic setting. They're looking into each other's eyes, they embraced, so it's probably not going to be a family member, all right? We know that there are some people saying, okay, dating, a couple, a bromance, possibly, who knows? They are in love, but again, there are many types of relationship. What is their exact relationship, even if they're in love, all right? Are they boyfriend and girlfriend? Are they engaged? Are they a married couple? Okay, so let me give you some more information. Suddenly, he got down on one knee and he pulled a ring out of his pocket. Her face was glowing with happiness. All right, so now if you were to infer, okay, if somebody were to ask you, you hear that whole story and they say, well, what is the relationship between these two people? All right, he's proposing to this person. So that means that their relationship right now would be, they're like boyfriend and girlfriend. They are a couple, and he is proposing to her, in which case they will get engaged, and it will be their fiance, okay? So this is where, again, you are listening to some information. I did not say they were boyfriend and girlfriend, but I'm giving you information so that you can infer that. You can infer, okay, he proposed to her, they are not married, they must be boyfriend and girlfriend. Now, let me back up, all right, and read it to you a different way, and I want to see what you can infer, all right? So, again, the question remains the same, all right? That I'm asking you, what is the relationship between these two people? And I am going to, okay, I'll start at the beginning, all right? I would say, same beginning. They were walking along the pier side by side when he reached down and took her by the hand. They had just met months ago at a coffee shop and really hit it off. All right. Now, if you don't know what it means, if this is a good idiom, another expression, to hit it off, it means when two people instantly become friends or they instantly make a connection and they get along really well. All right. So I've given you a little bit of a different situation, okay? Again, I want you to make an inference, okay? And the question's the same. What is the relationship between these two people? Let me read it again, and I'm going to finish the story, okay? So I just want you to listen. Here's the entire story. They were walking along the pier side by side when he reached down and took her by the hand. They had met just a few months ago at a coffee shop and really hit it off. As they walked, her fingers brushed his ring, a symbol of 8 years of turbulence. They stopped at the end of the pier and embraced. They stared into each other's eyes, listening to the sound of the ocean water below their feet. Okay, now I've given you a little more information, and I didn't know, let's see, I don't know if you were able to pick up on it if I said, well, what is the relationship between these two people? So again, I told you if you caught those key details, because I know that some of you guys are talking about throwing out the main idea. You could say, okay, love at first sight, that they're friends, maybe they were classmates. Let me read it again. See if you can pick out some key details. All right. They were walking along the pier side by side when he reached down and took her by the hand. They had just met months ago at a coffee shop and really hit it off. As they walked, her fingers brushed up against his ring, a symbol of 8 years of turbulence. They stopped at the end of the pier and embraced. They stared into each other's eyes, listening to the sound of the ocean water below their feet. Okay. I don't know if you guys caught that. So remember, I said they had only met months ago. All right. The guy, he's wearing a ring. And I said it stood for 8 years of turbulence. If the guy is wearing a ring like I'm wearing right now, what does that mean? Okay. It means he's married. So if they had only met a couple of months ago, what could you infer? All right, these two people are not married. You could say he's having an affair. Dun, dun, dun. Scandalous. I know. Okay. So in that case, what I was trying to say is that these two people, they're walking along the pier. They met months ago. They're holding hands. He's wearing a ring that stood for 8 years of turbulence. If you don't know what turbulence means, when you fly on a plane, when you're flying on the plane and the plane gets really shaky and bumpy, that is turbulence. So if you say something is a little turbulent, you say that it's bumpy, it's rocky, it's not steady, In which case, if the marriage is not steady, then probably that means there would be problems. Okay, so in that case, that information, that key detail right there would allow you to infer that, okay, he is having an affair, that he would be cheating on his wife, and that would be, again, making a different type of inference, okay? So let's look at the next part. So that was all about making inferences. Again, when you make an inference, you are listening to the information and you're trying to make a guess about other information, all right? The last part that I want to talk to you about is interpret meaning. Now, when I say that when I talk about interpreting meaning, this is a very broad topic. Specifically, I want to talk to you about two things. I want to talk to you about intonation and emphasis in order to help you interpret meaning whenever you're listening to somebody talk. So let's start with intonation. This is the rising and falling of someone's voice. When I say emphasis, I'm talking about you are stressing a word or a phrase to give a specific meaning. And what I mean by this, to help you interpret meaning when we're talking about intonation and emphasis, I'll give you another quote. And this is something that I like to say, that, it's not what you say, but how you say it. So when you think about listening to information, what somebody says, that may not always be the most important thing, but the way that they say it, the way they use their intonation, their emphasis, that is really going to help you interpret the true meaning of what somebody is saying, okay? Now, of course, I want to practice this. So I am going to, let me give you some examples when we talk about, first let's look at intonation. Because I told you intonation is talking about like the rising and the falling of someone's voice. Think about the question when you meet somebody. I might ask you and say, hey, how you doing? How you doing? That is a very common question. I want to know how you are. So if somebody just says, well, how you doing? Then it's a very simple question. There's no intonation. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen the show Friends. And the show Friends, there is a character called Joey. And one of his catchphrases was this question, and he would say it something like this. He'd say, how you doing? And he would say it in that way, how you doing? Now, when you say it like that, when the character would say it on the TV show, the true meaning of that is something that it's more something romantic, that he is interested in this other person. So he would see a beautiful woman and then he would say, how are you doing? And I'm not very good at saying that. But if you were to watch the show Friends, the character Joey would always say, how you doing? And again, it implies something romantic, that he has an interest in this woman. And again, it's all about intonation. That is the true meaning. So you can say it in a way that, again, you get more information. The same way, think about a question, okay? When you think about a question, usually there is a rising intonation at the end. So we can also use statements as a question as well. And that's going to give you a little more information. Think about this situation, all right? If somebody were to ask you, did you lock the door? Simple question. Did you lock the door? And somebody responds and says, I locked the door? Now, the way that I said that with a rising intonation was a question, all right, which is very different from the statement. So if somebody says, did you lock the door? And I say, I locked the door? If I say it like that with a rising intonation, I'm asking a question, which means that in my mind, I was thinking, wait, I was supposed to lock the door? No, I wasn't supposed to lock the door. So again, if you're able to identify something like intonation, you will better understand the situation as a whole. It's going to help you understand that main idea, that big picture. If somebody says, oh, did you lock the door? You say, what? I locked the door? You're saying a statement, but you're using that rising intonation, which means it's a question, okay? Now, let's look at emphasis. If you're talking about emphasis. Again, it is you are stressing a word or phrase to give it a specific meaning. Let's go back to that question that I asked you when I said, I lock the door, kind of like, I'm unsure of this thing. What if I were to say, like, add emphasis to I, and somebody says, did you lock the door? And I would say, I lock the door? It's almost like I'm questioning then, like, well, wait, I was not supposed to do it. You were supposed to do it. I locked the door? No. It wasn't me. So here's another sentence. I want you to think about the sentence, a simple sentence, and I just want you to listen to it. I'm going to say it with no emphasis. And the sentence is, she isn't driving to the park. She isn't driving to the park. You can listen to that. You understand it. Put a picture in your mind if it helps. She isn't driving to the park. Now, if I emphasize a certain word, it's going to change the meaning of the sentence. So, for example, what if I emphasize the very first word? If I emphasize she, and I were to tell you, well, she isn't driving to the park, what does that mean? If you are going to now interpret the meaning of this sentence, if I said, well, she isn't driving to the park, that means that, well, she is not doing it, somebody else is. Or what if I were to interpret the word and say, well, emphasize the word driving, all right? And I said, well, she isn't driving to the park. How does that change the meaning? She isn't driving to the park. What do you think if you were to interpret that meaning? Because that changes it a little bit. She isn't driving to the park. If I'm emphasizing driving, that means, well, she's not driving in a car. She's going to the park in some other way. Maybe she's walking to the park. Perhaps she's taking the bus to the park. Maybe there's a train, or maybe she's riding a horse. We don't know. But if somebody emphasized driving, then that's going to change the meaning a little bit. So again, emphasis is very important in understanding the specific meaning. I could even say, what if I emphasize the last word, park? And I say, well, she isn't driving to the park. What does that mean now? I changed it again when I emphasized the word park. She isn't driving to the park. What does that, how does that change the sentence? If I emphasize park, this is the place. That means, well, she's not driving to the park. She's driving to some other place. We don't know. Maybe she's driving to the grocery store. Maybe she's driving to the mall. But if I were to say, well, she isn't driving to the park, she's going somewhere else. So again, these are small little things that, again, I want you to keep in mind when you're talking about intonation and emphasis. That's really going to help you interpret the meaning of what you hear. When you're listening to not just a conversation, but you're watching a TV show, a movie, you're listening to the radio, anytime you are listening, that people are going to use intonation, they're going to use emphasis, and this could change the meaning. And that's what I really want you to be aware of when it comes to those things. So in basically what I want to do is just quick little in review, all right? So we talked about these 4 listening skills right here. Main idea. I told you this is the most important one. This is the first thing that I think when you're listening to something that you should really try to grasp, okay? What is the main topic? And then once you get the main idea, see if you can pick out some of those key details. And those key details, that might allow you to make inferences and try to understand information that was not directly stated. And then also as you're listening, especially if you're listening to a conversation and somebody's talking or they're telling a story, listen for that intonation and emphasis because it's going to help you interpret the true meaning of what someone really wants to say. So these are the 4 skills that we talked about today. This is what I wanted to practice with you. And I hope this helps because like I told you, listening for me, this is my greatest challenge when I'm learning a language. Some of you might find listening pretty easy. Others might find it difficult, but it is always good to practice. And the fact that you're able to identify some of these different skills, whether it's main idea or making inferences, and we can just take one at a time and practice that, This is going to help you the next time you are listening to, well, anything, a TV show, a movie, and you want to identify the main idea and listen for those details. All of it helps. Even just watching this lesson and listening to me. Right now, you've been listening to me go on for over a half hour. Anytime you are listening and getting exposure to the language, that helps. So I would encourage you, surround yourself with the language. Try to get more listening, whether it's listening to an audiobook, whether you're listening to a conversation, or maybe you want to go out and listen to another one of our lessons. It's all going to help. So again, if you enjoyed this lesson, please, I would appreciate it. Hit that like button down below. Thank you guys so much. I just want to say thank you to, let's see, Sleepwalker, Morgana, Aiden, Shim, Thap. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Last things I want to mention. If you guys want to connect with us via email, you guys can, check us out right there. I just threw a link in the chat. There's also a link down below. Oh, one last thing. We did start doing YouTube join memberships. We are now active on YouTube. You can join up with a membership. And during these live lessons, there are some cool emojis that you can use, some badges. Check out the link. Link is in the description down below if you want to become a member. Thank you guys again. Bojan, Francesca, Kareem, Sandy, Ahmad, Nekla. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you next time. So long.